A literal hedgehog?
No, they...
Oh. Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah. Hello, welcome to Gunpowder Fiction and Plot.
Hi.
I'm Scott.
I'm Nell.
And today we're going to do a quick January wrap of the books we've read and whether we're on track to achieve our reading goals or not.
Scott's read 1 billion, so we're going to start with him. Scott, the first book you read this month of January was The Well-Beloved by Thomas Hardy. What was that about?
So that is a romance novel. It is an intergenerational romance novel, and it's weird.
It's weird.
It's weird.
Can I have a different word than weird?
So the main character falls in love with somebody they call the Well-Beloved, and that is a spirit that jumps from woman to woman to woman, and he falls out of love with them as soon as the spirit leaves, and he goes on to the next one.
Oh, this is a similar idea to another book that I'm going to have to Google it, about someone who woke up every day in a different body and a person falling in love with this
It's a movie, a series you were watching.
Oh, it was a movie, you're right, that's right. I'll find that and I will put the name in the subtitles.
Well, anyway, the Well-Beloved settles on this. He falls in love with this lady, and then he runs away and she dies. And he comes back and she dies 20 odd years later.
Yeah.
And he becomes infatuated with her, and she has the spirit of the Well-Beloved, and he comes back and he sees her walking around, and it turns out to be her daughter, and he falls in love with the daughter of a woman he used to love. And that is
weird,
and it gets weirder. It's not as moralistic as other Hardy books.
Okay, but it sounds uncomfortable.
It's definitely asking questions about the nature of love and age and all of that, and there's things where he plots to see people in the dark so they can't tell how old he is.
Creepy. Okay, so book number 2 was a George Eliot book, Daniel Deronda. Can we have what was that about?
Daniel Deronda, quick blow. It centers on 2 characters, Daniel Deronda and Gwendoline Harlith.
And what was her name?
Gwendoline Harlith.
Yeah.
So it centers on those 2 characters, and it is, I want to say a love triangle, but it's more like a love octagon,
Well, that's a lot of sides.
I don't know. There's 4 people definitely involved, 5 people, 6 people, it's real world, there's no love triangles, there's...
Yeah, unrequitedness going on.
If everybody's in a love triangle, then you have some weird multi-dimensional shape. And that's what it is. Also...
Ooh, it's a love prism.
Prism. Yeah.
Like a love prism, but it's
like
a prism. I like that.
Like a lattice. I love lattice.
Oh, he's such a nerd.
Also, Daniel Deronda, the main character, was adopted, and he has questions of self-identity in that. It was ultimately a really good book. George Eliot is very good at discussing.
How many stars did you give it?
I gave it 4 stars.
I don't do stars, but we'll talk about how many stars Scott gives because he cares.
I normally love George Eliot, and my one criticism of that book was the character Myra wasn't developed enough for me.
So how many stars did you give to The Princess Bride by William Goldman?
This was my most disappointing book of the month. I only gave it 2 stars. I think this is a perfect example of that cliche, the book's always better than the movie. That's wrong. William Goldman is a screenwriter, and he wrote a screenplay, and he wrote a book, and the screenplay is better. And I think I might discuss that in another video and go into why that was so bad.
We made a video about this one, The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. How many stars did you give that one?
gave it 3 stars.
Which surprises me because we made a video about unbelievable plots. So check that out. What other than the plot taking some interesting turns, what do you have to say about Alan?
Well, so that's a book. It's about, and this is going to sound like the most boring idea for a book ever. It's about a cathedral being built. The central character is a guy called Philip, who is the prior of a bunch of monks. I forget what a bunch of monks is called, but
I doubt it's a bunch. They're not grapes.
a bunch. A murder of monks. A convent of monks. That might be.
Possibly.
Yeah, I don't know.
A cloister.
A cloister. I know that's good. A cloister of monks.
In the comments below, please give your collective noun for monks.
Yeah, in fact, it doesn't have to be accurate. Don't Google it. Make something up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it has the character Tom Builder, who comes along and builds it, and it has Tom's 2 sons.
Builder.
Yeah, he's not very inventive with his last names. He has his 2 sons, Alfred Builder and Jack Jackson, who is his stepson.
Is Jack Jackson terrible at building?
Jack Jackson is wonderful at building.
It's disappointing.
Alfred Builder is terrible at building. And then Jack's mum, Elaine, and it has a girl called Aliena, who is Jack's love interest, and she is, the 2 women are the best characters in the book by far.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Norwegian Wood. How do I say this? By
Haruki Murakami.
Murakami. I think we both butchered that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, double butchered. Very prominent Japanese novel, very prominent Japanese writer. I gave that 3 stars.
Un, deux, trois.
12 stars. In the end, I don't really know what to think about this novel. It definitely improves as the novel goes on. It's a anti-romance novel. It discusses depression and suicide and sex. That they are, and obviously and love, and that's what the book is about. It's well written. I didn't like the beginning. It really reminded me of like Catcher in the Rye all grown up to begin with, and then it just
a bit manny,
and then it went on its own way, and it figured things out. I liked how the main character was an unreliable narrator, but because he was dumb, I really liked Midori. That is not how you pronounce her name. That's a drink.
She's not a melon cocktail.
She's not a melon cocktail. Her character constantly coming on to the main character, and the main character not even realising it.
Midori's a bit of a slut, is that what you're saying? The melon cocktail's
the melon cocktail. Look, there is one thing where she's asking him about.
Makes me think of my 20s.
Have a bit of Midori in you.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, look, the main character is just so unreliable, doesn't understand what's going on, and Midori is throwing herself at him ridiculously.
So your next one for the month was The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbary. How many stars?
I gave it 4 stars.
This one's a good one. So what happened? What's the story?
This is a weird book because I don't like books that don't center me. I really like to be centered in a book. That's just a personal preference.
Okay, so I think we should talk about, what do you mean by being centered in a book?
I just like to know who the main character is and what's happening, and I like to have a real idea of the plot, and then you can take tangents to the plot and discuss things, but if I can't figure out what's going on with the plot, that's the trouble.
I don't know if that's the best description for what you mean. Scott gets really uncomfortable in books if he can't figure out who the protagonist is, and if it's not laid out clearly, and if he can't sense the purpose, I think, is the other thing. So sometimes the structure of the book can be off-putting in the beginning. He usually finds his feet in the middle of the novel, regardless of how it starts.
Yeah, I just some books feel like they start in the middle, and I feel like I'm playing catch up. And other books start with, "This is John. John is a builder." Yeah, but they you know, they start like that. This book started with thoughts of the two narrators, two different characters narrate this book, and you don't know who those characters are, and one of them is this elder woman, and one of them is this 11-year-old girl who thinks she is the smartest thing alive and then proves it to you. I always like having a smart-ass young girl in the book. I love that. Precocious.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I like young, precocious characters. I like them better when they're girls. Don't know why. Probably because I think they're underestimated more. Anyway.
I think because little boys you associate with and you expect them to be smart because you were smart. That's my opinion.
I don't know.
It's either that or you're a misogynist.
The little girl introduces herself by telling you her plans to commit suicide, burn down the apartment block she lives in.
Oh, awesome.
Right?
That sounds horrifying.
And then, but she's completely rational and not at all crazy. She has just come to this conclusion that that's what she's going to do for various reasons. And then you sort of switch back between the main character, the hedgehog, and the little girl.
A literal hedgehog?
No, they...
Oh. Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah. You switch back and forth between these characters, and they're very similar. One being a woman in her 50s, one being a girl in her... being an 11-year-old girl. And that's really interesting. They're both very intelligent, they're both well read, and they've both got all these interests. One of the interests is Japanese culture, and it's interesting how one character talks about the Mongol invasion of Japan and her love for Japanese tea and the Japanese tea ceremony, and the other one talks about her love of manga. A very interesting, and I imagine that's a divisive book too. I imagine that's a love it or hate it book.
Your next one's a reread for you, The Eye of the World, which is number 1 of the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan.
Yes.
How many stars did you give this?
4.
I'm attempted to read this and I did not enjoy, so go on.
Yeah, so this is a bit of escapism. It is an interesting little book. Rereading it, I found it quite slow, but obviously lots of world building in the first book of an epic 15-book series. But I was able to enjoy bits that I wasn't able to enjoy the first time through. There is a particular quote from Matt that I really liked, which is, "You wouldn't judge a man for what he did when he was crazy."
But you won't say why, because that would be a spoiler.
Oh, no, I'll say why. Because this is about channeling and magic, and the magic world is broken into 2 halves, Saidin and Saidar. One half is the female half, one half is the male half. Only men can channel one half of it, only women can channel the other half of it. And it is useless for men to teach women how to channel and for women to teach men how to channel, because they're just completely different, and nobody will learn from anybody that way. Anyway, when women channel, they can do stuff and it's all fine, but when men channel, the channel is tainted, the source is tainted, and they slowly go crazy. And men end up destroying the world, and the world sort of repeats itself in this circular way, and men destroy the world because the Dark One has tainted the magical source. So it's all about the characters going crazy, and then the women characters not being crazy, which you can actually argue is kind of similar to how the world's going with capitalism and global warming and various men in power in different times.
Your last book for the month is called The Vegetarian by Han Kang? Or Han Kang?
Han Kang, yeah. So this is a Korean book. It's my first Korean book. It gets my goal of to read a different book from a different country. This book is whacked.
whacked.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm myself, but when I was 14.
Yeah, okay.
This book is it's about a woman who one day decides to stop eating meat and all animal products, so she becomes a vegan essentially, but somehow that gets translated as a vegetarian, which just must be a language thing, I assume. And it's about the prejudices she faces, and then it gets a bit weird. She has a husband who does not understand it and is put out by her choices, and it does not empathise with her position at all, and is a complete POS to her, and then it gets really weird. It goes into another part, and there's this thing with flowers. They paint their body with flowers, and they have sex, and if you can explain to me what that's allegorical of, or what that means, or what that represents, I don't know.
I imagine that's one of the things that's potentially different about reading from other cultures, is that sometimes we're going to miss the references because they might be Korean and from Korean culture.
And I was trying to decide early on whether the husband was acting in a traditional Korean sense,
or if he was an arse.
And not knowing the Korean culture very well, I came to the conclusion that he was an arse a lot later than I would have if that was written by a modern English, American, Australian author. And then it finishes off with this thing about anorexia, and it really brings this idea of consent throughout the whole book home, and it questions when you do and don't have, so not consent, but bodily autonomy rather, and when you do and don't have bodily autonomy, and a character going, I don't want to eat, I don't like eating, and should you force them to eat?
Or let them die.
Or let them die, and that is ultimately a really challenging question. I'm going to do a review on this book. I thought this book's got a really low rating on Goodreads, and I thought, well, look, that's about vegetarianism and veganism. That's a divisive topic. People are going to hate that, and I think this book is actually a real love it or hate it book.
Did you love it or did you hate it?
Both. I found it...
Ooh, it's a love it and hate it book.
I found some of it so hard to read. It was so cringy and hard to read. Yeah.
So, after all that big long talking about all your books, what does that mean for your goals so far this year?
So, I've read 8 books, which is well and truly above my 80 for the year that I want to read. I want to read a third of all my novels in a month. I want them to be read by female authors, and I want to get 50% for the year. 3 out of 8 is more than a third, but is under 50%.
But that's looking good.
But that doesn't look too bad. I read an author from a new country, which is one of my goals. I've actually added a few goals to my list since we did our goals video, if anybody's wondering why. I read an historical fiction, which is a goal. I read a series that is a goal. Princess Bride was the book on my TBR for the longest, which is a goal. I want to get a book that's been on my TBR for a long time offered every month. I did not read a comedy book, but I've got down to read 6 of them in the year, so I've got all of February to read a comedy book. I think there's another goal, but it's totally gone. Okay, so now I'm going to be interviewing now, and you're going to talk about the books you read. So how many books did you read for January? 2 books. And what was the first book you read?
Brave New World by Aldous Huxley.
And what was that book about?
It was about a brave new world.
It's a classic, it's a well-known book.
I can describe the book, Scott.
Why? What is different about it than other dystopian novels?
I don't know, but it's like basically every dystopian novel ever, it is much more about the world and teaching you the world through the characters than about teaching you than about character development. So although there is some character development through the plot, that's definitely not the focus. There's a wishy-washy bit in the middle that I think is a bit torturous to get through, but the ending is quite awesome. And I'm going to do an annotated reading of the debate scene towards the end and make a video about that. So that will be coming soon.
Sounds interesting.
I hope so. It might be really boring, but we'll see what everyone else says.
Okay. And you don't do stars, so do you give it a thumbs up or?
I enjoyed this book.
You enjoyed this book. Okay. And what was the second book you read?
I read Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger,
author of
A Time Traveler's Wife, which I really loved. I loved Time Traveler's Wife, so this was a good one for me to follow up with, and I enjoyed this too, although it made me very angry at the end. I've never been made so angry by an ending that was so true to character.
So we're going to do a video about
this one too. So I won't say too much, just so that you have to watch the video to hear all about that one. But I did really enjoy that one too.
So quickly, do you want to say what it's about?
No, they can watch the other video.
They can watch the other video.
I don't want to repeat myself. So for my goals, I didn't read enough books this month. That was going to happen. January is a very busy month for our business. Scott gets to read more when we're busy because he's on the road and he listens to audiobooks, and I get to read less when we're busy because I only read in our leisure time. So I did not read my 4 target books for the month. I only read 2. I did not read Les Mis. That's not one of the books.
I think if you do read Les Mis, that should count as 4 books because it's so long.
I don't think Goodreads works like that. Did I expand my representation by reading this month is my other goal, and the aim is to read from 2 representative groups, and I've read 1 female author. That's the only author representation that I think I can count this month. So one of my goals is to read books that have been on my existing TBR shelf from 2019 or before, and both the books I read this month have been sitting on that shelf for a while, so that was good. My last goal is to read from some new countries because I haven't represented authors from very many countries in my reading historically, so
like English and American.
Yeah, I didn't add any new countries, unfortunately. I've already done England. If you want to see all the countries that I've read from, you should look at our geography tag video. But yeah, so I think I did okay given how much work overtook our lives this month, and I started American Gods for our new book club. So I hope next month will be better, and I'll read some more.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our January wrap. All the books we read will be in the description. If you've got anything to say about any of the books, we'd love to hear what you thought. We'd love to have conversation. We'd like to, one of the reasons we started this channel was to talk about books. So if you've got anything you want to say about the books, please say something. And
how many books do you read in a month? I'm really interested to know how many books other people read in a month on average, because I don't read very many, and I want to feel better about that. So don't tell me if you read 100.
If you like this content, subscribe to our channels. We post new videos whenever we feel like it, so yay.
There's no regularity to our posting, but we try and do at least one every week. So yeah. Ideas are powerful. They're more powerful than an ending that makes you angry.